Dive into a world of endless possibilities at your neighborhood library. Your neighborhood library.
Hi, guys.
This is exciting.
Yes.
Congratulations.
Thank
Let's
you.
give Willow one more round of applause. So tonight we're just going to chat about the
Yes.
writing process, about why this book, about how you got to this place. So first, I would love for you to share your why. Why this book and why now?
Wow. I wish I had a deeper answer than I'm a nerd. I'm such a nerd. And I started writing this in my teens, like my early teens. And I was just in a space where I was so interested in just history and like just how cultures have evolved, how, humans have evolved. And I know it sounds kind of random, but on top of my already instilled need and want to learn about these things, I was also watching the show Vikings.
Amazing.
On History Channel. I know it sounds crazy. I know it does. But I was watching it and I was like, whoa, like I'm really getting brought into this time period. And then I started wondering, I was like, we don't learn about what was happening in Africa during this time period. Like at least I didn't learn about it in school or anything. And I was like, whoa. I went on this whole spiral of just like, let me try to find as much as I can about mythology and just like different cultures and different languages. And I was like, whoa, like it really just took me for a few years. And I was like, no, I have to express this like deep desire and just inspiration for this time period.
So you mentioned you started writing this in your teens. You are no
Yeah.
longer in your teens.
Yeah.
So how has your womanhood impacted your writing? Like when you go back and read some of that early stuff, do you feel the same? Do you feel like it's deepened? Tell us a little bit about that growth and evolution.
Man, I feel like I used to love reading books that were so like descriptive. Like there would be like 3 pages describing just the mountains. Like, just, so I love that stuff. And I would try to just like reading the older chapters. Like I wrote the first 12 chapters by myself and then I realized, oh my goodness, this is like a real feat that I want to do, and I don't have the tools to do this by myself. But I was just writing so much during that time and just connecting with like what do I want to say through this character?
Yeah. Yeah. So I have to go back. You said you didn't have the tools and you essentially wanted and needed to ask for help.
Yes, 100%.
How was that for you, being able to name that and say, I want this thing to come to life. I need support in doing that, especially as a Black woman, and being able to say I need support around our work.
Totally.
How did that make you feel, and how was your experience with your co-author?
Wow. So at first I was like, man, like I just didn't learn anything about this. Like I really need to, like if I really want to make something worth reading, like I really need to do my research. And that's when I went to my parents. Actually, no, let me back up. I went to a whole bunch of bookstores and I was like, oh, I can't find what I need to find, like about this. It's super niche period in time, you know what I'm saying? And I just couldn't find anything about it. And so I went to my parents and they were like, yo, have you been to the library that we have in the house? And I was like, what? And I found so much literature on specifically West African mythology and just culture. And I was like, oh my goodness, like that was the basis for me to be like, okay, let me figure this out. And then me and Jess met my co-author, and she went to college for anthropology and sociology, and it was a specific, like through those two lenses, it was specifically looking at this time period.
Wow.
Weirdly enough.
Wow.
And it was just a beautiful meeting of minds, and I just love her so much. I wish she was here. She's just a beautiful, intelligent person.
Talk us through the main character.
Yafeu.
How did you come to want her to be the shining star in this book?
Well, I just felt like we always write from a perspective of like what we see. You know what I'm saying? Like it's very hard to be like, oh, I'm gonna write a book about like an experience or a person that I would know completely nothing about.
Right.
And I just felt super connected to Yafeu and that character, and I wanted it to be through her eyes because I felt like this kind of story arc is just so unique and different, and it would be just super cool and different to see it through her eyes.
So this book is told from the point of view of 3 different characters.
Yes.
Walk us through their relationship and how you brought them together in this book.
So Yafeu is our main character, and she's a bold, just very strong and driven young woman who is from Ghana. And then we have Freydis, who, I feel like the thing that really ties these two characters together is that they've always felt like they didn't belong, or like people were trying to tell them that what their nature was not accepted. So in Yafeu's village, it's deep. We could go long. I don't know how much time we have. But her family, not her immediate family, but her extended family was not open or receptive to the fact that she wanted to be a warrior, that she wanted to, live her life in these ways that weren't specifically feminine ways. And so she always felt oppressed on that front. And, obviously her immediate family, not obviously, I mean, if you guys haven't read the book, it's not obvious.
But it will be obvious.
But it will be obvious.
Yes.
Yes, it will be obvious. I don't want to rant on and on and on, but the string between these 3 characters, they're so different, but the string between them is that they are looking for community, and throughout their life, they hadn't felt like they had a home, a place to really belong. And so these 3 characters come together to create a space for other people who feel that way, and pretty much to overthrow the powers that be that try to keep the voiceless without a voice.
We can give that a clap.
That was long. I'm sorry, guys. That was long-winded.
But that was great. And it brought me to 2 questions. So I'm big on community and community care and finding a way to weave that into our lives.
Yeah.
So I'm curious what you learned during this writing process about community, your own community, and then creating this village, this community within the book.
Wow. I think what I learned about my community through writing this book is that, you have ups and downs, you have negative moments, quote unquote, but the real thing that keeps you connected to a person is their ability and their capacity to stay right there with you in your common desire for the future. We could have a disagreement, but if I know deep down that everything that you're saying comes from a deep intention to create togetherness,
right,
however, whatever that looks like,
right,
we're just getting our wires crossed. You know what I'm saying? But that knowing deep down, and you have to trust.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And that's what Yafeu and these characters have to do, is they have to learn how to trust each other in this insanely violent and complicated landscape. And it says a lot about our time today, even though it takes place like right when Christianity is just popping off. People are like, oh, Christ? I think we like him. So that's a long time ago.
Yeah.
But it still informs, what we go through today.
What did you learn about yourself and trusting yourself when writing this book? Because writing books is not easy. It's a feat. I mean, you've been writing this book since you were a teenager, so we clearly know it's a feat.
6 years.
So what did you learn about self-trust and like not just throwing in the towel? Because there have been many moments where I know a lot of us want to just throw in the towel and say, I can't do this. I'm not built for this. I don't deserve this.
Yeah.
Talk to us about your self-trust journey through book writing.
Just like I was saying before about like, let's write 3 pages of, just expressing how the mountains look. That was, something that I would always come back to. And my writing partner would be like, hey, like, I know that you're trying to inject this sense of beauty, but like, your story speaks on its own, and you don't have to like try to like make it sound smart or put these words in it that whatever. It's like,
yeah.
And so I feel like that really connected back to my personal growth and just being like, trust that your story is enough.
Yeah.
Like trust that what has come from your heart and what has come from your mind is substantial enough that you don't need to be like, oh, and then this and this and that, and make it like a whole like theatrical thing that doesn't even need to be there.
Right.
So that was a really big trusting moment.
It's always nice to have people be our mirrors, especially in our work. And you do so many things. Curious to know how you've shifted from being an advocate, an artist. Like, you're just an amazing young woman. You are phenomenal. I'm curious to know like how you are being shaped in this season of your life, with adding author to the, the list of beautiful things that you're doing, but also you had an album come out recently that's gorgeous.
Thank you.
So wearing a lot of different hats and feeling grounded in that and not feeling like you have to just be one thing or do one thing. Curious to know what you've been learning about that.
You have to know how to manage your time.
Right.
You have to know how to manage your time. You have to figure out tools to self-soothe. When you're outputting so much creative energy, experiencing a lot of different experiences, trying to get that creative energy out into the world even more.
Right.
You can get drained. And what you want is to be able to, even when you are drained, even when you are tired, to like stay there and just be present,
Yeah.
That's what I've been really trying to do.
Okay.
But the self-soothing is so important.
And that's one of my favorite words in the world.
Yeah.
Like, how are we self-soothing? Are we taking a deep breath? Are we in our body?
Yes.
Because writing music, writing books, it requires us to be in our body. And so I love that you said that, like finding tools that help you self-soothe. So what are your 3 tools that helped you during this process? Top 3, if you could name 3.
Okay. I'll try. Just what you said, like taking a deep breath, like looking around and being like, okay, we might not realize it, but our nervous system is like on the fritz, like so much.
Yeah.
It's almost like we're clenching a muscle that we didn't know we were clenching.
Yeah.
And so recently I've just been like, okay, like, where is that muscle that I didn't know I was clenching? Like, just for a sec, even if it's like 2 seconds.
Yeah.
And just like not even trying to do anything, but getting a moment of silence just to like, don't be on your phone. Like, don't even try to be like, I'm meditating, because that's a whole thing.
Right.
That's a whole thing. It stresses you out so much more. But just being in silence.
Yeah.
You just be in silence.
Which is deeply uncomfortable for a lot of us. It's a muscle that we didn't know we were clenching.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. But sometimes when there's just so much happening, you're just like, whew, I just need a little bit of silence.
Talk us through your writing process. So you wrote the first 12 chapters, you said, by yourself.
Yes.
Kudos. Amazing. And then you brought your co-author in. So I'd love to know the process when you were writing the first 12.
100%.
And then when you had Jess come in and kind of help you shape the rest of the book.
Totally. I was so excited and really not organized at all when I first started writing this book. I remember I was on a hiking trip with my mom, and I just started writing. I was like, okay, I don't have an outline or anything. Like, I'm just going to start writing this in a notebook.
Best way to do it.
And so I just started chapter 1. Like, no, like, I personally feel like if I could go back and maybe redo that, I maybe would.
Okay.
But maybe not. I mean, it was an emotional thing that happened, and that's what needed to happen. But first 12 chapters were written that way. And then I started trying to do more research, trying to find, someone to write it with me. And I met Jess. And through us talking, I realized what her major was, and like, the sociology and the anthropology specifically in this time. And I was like, yo, like, that's literally perfect.
Yeah.
And so she read my 12 chapters.
Wow.
And she pretty much was like going through like certain historical points that I maybe we should move this here because this actually happened in history at this time, or maybe we should move this to chapter because it would be easier. She was really instrumental in taking my just emotional outburst and putting it on a timeline.
And we need that.
Yeah, and because people have been saying the book is sci-fi fantasy, but it's really not. It's a historical fiction. There's really no like magical science things in it. It's very real and kind of dark at some points. But yeah, I just felt like I should address the science fiction thing.
The joy of writing this book, how did it bring you closer to your inner child? The reason why I'm asking that is because fiction is so, like, it has to be, it's imaginative. We create worlds and characters, and kudos to you. I don't think I could ever write fiction. You could. I mean, I don't think I would. I'm gonna leave that to you. But I love that because I don't read like self-help. I know I write self-help. I don't read it. I need fiction. I need romance. I need steamy. I need mystery and historical fiction. So I'm curious, like, how did you find joy and get back to your inner child when writing this book? You had to use your imagination, and it's almost like you learned to play again, especially in adulthood. So what was that like for you?
It was totally me learning how to play again in a different way.
Yeah.
Like I would dream about these characters. Like I would be living and be thinking like, oh my goodness, like that specific interaction between those people, like, oh my goodness, that's so Yafeyu and Freydis, or like I need to write something. It was always like a world that I could go to. Like my own, like the world of my creation.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And it's so much joy in that.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's so much joy in that.
A world that you can go to that you made.
Yeah.
I think that's really beautiful. And for all the artists out there and other writers, I think that's what our art does. It creates a world, and so many of us don't dive into our creative hearts because we feel like it's not valuable. And I think that this is showing us, every time a new book is born, it's showing us that our work is valuable.
Yes, and that what comes from our minds, what comes from our hearts, that is valuable.
Right. Right.
I feel like that has a lot to do with just specifically being Black women and growing up in this society, and sometimes feeling like you're just not accepted. Your specific beauty is not the brand of beauty that people want to see, or the way that you talk, or the way that you dress, or whatever it is.
Right.
And I think you're completely right about that. Like authors like Octavia Butler, like those, The Parable of the Sower, like that kind of stuff is what has always inspired me to be a writer.
That's beautiful. Shifting back to the main character, she wasn't really accepted with being a warrior, right? How did you create a space for her on the page to find her confidence? And where did that come from for you?
I wanted the reader to feel like they were gaining that confidence with Yafeyu.
Yeah.
I have a hard time sometimes of not being like, I want people to feel this. Put it on the page.
Me
like,
too.
just exactly that. And it's
Yeah.
like, sometimes you gotta like...
Slow burn it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sometimes you gotta like, okay, like, let me see how I could more artistically put this on the page.
Right.
And that was a struggle for me. I'm not gonna lie. Like, there were a lot of moments where I was like, Yafeyu should just say this. Or like, Yafeyu should just think this. And it's like, that's just kind of cheapening the deep, beautiful idea that you want to put on the page and like shrinking it down to like a sentence.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And I was like, dang, like that's so true. I don't want to do that. So I feel like I tried really hard to make it feel gradual. Yeah, to just make it feel gradual and not like I'm just stating things on a page.
So many questions. So managing your time. I definitely want to dive into that because you are doing so much. You are who you are in the world. How did you carve out time for yourself during this process? And how do you plan on coming down after tour? Because, girl, it's a wild ride.
These are the things that I have not figured out yet.
It's okay. Let's talk through it. Let's talk through it on stage.
No, it's honestly beautiful because even though I haven't figured it out, I think about it and I try to plan ahead and I try to like, if you don't know how to do something, you try to learn how to do something.
Right.
But you can't learn how to do something when you're just like, I'm just gonna keep doing what I've always done.
Right.
So I'm really in a position right now where I'm trying not to just do what I've always done.
Yeah.
And choose better ways to relax.
Ooh, talk about that. Choose better ways to relax. Say more.
Yeah, because I feel like sometimes the stress of life, or when you're working so hard, or when it's like, you know, you're one-track minded.
Yeah.
I feel like sometimes we can kind of feel like we want to escape or be like, oh, no, like I need to do this, or like I'm maybe more judgmental than I usually am, or maybe I'm watching more trash TV than I usually need to be watching, or maybe I'm on Instagram way more in between because I'm like, oh, my mind gets to mindlessly do something.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And just trying not to do those things, but lovingly, you know what I'm saying? Not being like, you're bad for doing this.
Right.
But it's like
finding self-compassion in that.
Yeah, exactly, because we are human. Oh my goodness, and it gets intense.
It's an interesting place to be.
Yeah,
being a human and being on this planet. So, what do you want young writers and readers and everybody to take away from this book?
I want them to feel seen, and I want them to know that when you really tap into what your soul is trying to say, like that's it. You know, like people could be like, oh my goodness, I love it, or I hate it.
Right.
But you deep down knowing like, that's it though.
Yeah.
Like
you get what you get.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like I put my soul on the page, or whatever you're doing with your life. I put my soul in that song, or I put my soul in that plate of food that I made, or whatever it is. That's it. Like that's the place that we're all searching for, that we maybe don't know that we're searching for that.
I love that. I have one more question. I'm trying to figure out how to word it. So you started writing this book 6 years ago. You are here now. What words of encouragement, what permission would you give your younger self if you were mentoring her on this journey?
I need to call this woman to be my therapist, guys. What would I say to my younger self? What permission would I give my younger self? I would tell her, not everyone is going to see your vision. And I know that that's going to make you feel like maybe your vision is a mistake, or maybe it's not really your vision, or maybe it's wrong. But I give my younger self permission to feel joy even when that is happening. You can still feel joy. You can still allow yourself to feel joy. You don't have to be walking around like, what do people think about me? Like, am I wrong? Like walking around with that energy. So yeah.
I love that. Everyone give it up for Willow Smith.
Thank you guys for coming.
So before we go, we have some audience questions. So let's go through those. Let's see what we got here. Do you have any specific habits or rituals that you tap into before writing?
Habits or rituals. I think this isn't intentional, but before I start writing, I always have a little bit of just like a creative rant.
Okay.
Where I'm just like, oh, no, and this is what I need to da-da-da-da, like a just mad scientist moment.
Okay.
Where I'm just kind of ranting on and on.
I love
It
that.
gets me prepared, gets me ready.
You rant out loud or
I
like
rant
voice
out
memo?
loud.
Oh, I love that.
Rant out loud.
Have you considered recording your rants?
I haven't.
It's like a voice note journaling moment?
I probably would be embarrassed, but I should do
You
that.
should do that. That's the writing teacher in me.
Yes.
You should absolutely do that.
And then listen back and be like, wait a minute.
Because there might be gold in there.
Yeah, you're right.
Okay.
Okay, I'm going to start doing that.
Adding that to your ritual of things.
Yes, I'm going to start doing that.
Okay. I'm sorry, I didn't say the name. Carlita asked that question. Toon is asking this question. While creating the book, Black Shield Maiden, and the album, Empathogen, was there an inspiration overlap? Oh, that's a great question.
Well,
Thank you, Toon, for that.
Yes. Someone just pointed this out to me the other day, which I didn't realize, is the cover is, a woman with a beautiful afro, and my album cover is me with my natural hair out. Mm-hmm. I didn't realize that was a thread, but someone brought that up, and I was like, wow. I was like, I just love being Black, and
Yes.
and I think that's the overlap.
That's the overlap. Black joy.
Yes,
thoroughly. I love it. Ayana asked, how does it feel to have such a beautiful and powerful impact on younger and older generations?
It's definitely a responsibility. Like, I don't take that lightly. I want everything that I put out into the world to inspire people or, make them feel less alone. Mm-hmm. I think that sometimes some of the media that is out in the world is just kind of strips us of, any semblance of like feeling worthy or feeling like, things make any sense. And I just want to be there for people to be like, you know what? When I put on her song or when I read her book, like, it feels like things make sense.
I love that. Deja Johnson asks, how should an inspired artist/singer get their feet wet?
Okay, so this is something new that I've been doing.
Okay, tell us.
I have never been the kind of person to... I read this book called Effortless Mastery, and basically it was talking about, like, practicing singing, but from, like, a spiritual place, and, like, looking at yourself in the mirror, and, like, making, like, a tone, but, like, not trying to make it a specific note, but just, like, practicing being present, looking yourself in the eye, and making... and singing. That's cool. I think that could get you deeper into your voice and just into yourself.
I'm going to try that, and I can't sing, so I wonder if it'll...
You can! Everyone can sing.
Willow, do not tell me I can sing, because y'all will get an album.
Yes!
I was just telling my husband, listen, we were listening to Fantasia, When I See You, on the way over here, and I started singing. He said, well, that sounded good. I said, oh, I can sing. He said, I said that it sounded good. So y'all don't tell me that, because
I love that.
you'll get an album.
I love that so much.
Okay, so I'm going to loop back to Riley Patterson. This is just really warming my heart. I'm a 14-year-old trying to find her way to her dream career. Do you have any advice for someone who wants to be a singer? I want to cry, because at 14...
This is beautiful. This is beautiful. That. Riley?
Riley. Mm-hmm.
Riley. I would say look up videos of, like, Prince and, like, Aretha Franklin and, like, Ella Fitzgerald and Miles Davis. Just, like, look at all of that stuff. Just, like, soak it in. Like, just put it on in the background when you're not even paying attention. Mm-hmm. Like, just let it soak into your subconscious. I find that when we listen to the people who have done it the best, we, inside of our minds and our hearts, we get inspired, and our creative light gets turned on by their eternal brilliance, really.
Yeah.
And so I would say just fill yourself with the highest quality of music, and just sing.
And
just sing.
I love that. Brandon asked, has the current climate for women globally impacted the narrative of this story? If so, in what ways?
No, it's real. I'm like, that's a good question.
If so, in what ways does the essence of power dovetail into real life, and are there parts of your own life story that evoke power? Amen to that question.
Yes.
Thank you, Brandon.
This sounds like this person might have read an interview that I did, or maybe not an interview, but there was like an author's letter.
Okay.
Where I talked about Yafeyu having like a more like outward external expression of power, and Yafeyu having, and Freydis having a more internal expression of power. And I think that's really, really interesting, because I feel like, in this day and age with the feminist movement, sometimes, and I am included, we can get so one-track minded and feel like this is our goal. And sometimes along that line, we take on some of the characteristics that we may not like.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? And I have definitely done this and still do it sometimes when I don't align myself. But, us as women being like, we don't need to exhibit these external kinds of power if that's not what comes naturally to us, in order to try to get you to see me as a human being, to try to get you to see that I'm valuable. And so that's a really amazing question, because yes. And that is definitely woven into just these specific themes in the book, 100%.
Michelle asks, if there could be a theme song for this book, what would it be?
Wow, a theme song. Man, it would probably, we need some cellos, some horns, I don't know, something cinematic. I'm not sure, but definitely something cinematic.
I love it. Melanie is asking, what are your favorite Black books? What books are in your parents' library? You mentioned that earlier. What books are in your parents' library that have inspired you the most?
Wow. So I was talking about Octavia Butler earlier.
Yep.
And the Parable of the Sower. That book changed my life when I read that book. We never really see sci-fi, fantasy, Black writers.
Right.
Which is why Octavia Butler is so special. I say, if you're down to cry a little bit and be extremely interested in the world that this person has created, read that book. That's what I say.
And what books are in your parents' library that inspired you the most? That one? Would you say?
Yeah, that one.
Oh, period.
100%.
So that's the favorite book.
Yeah, that's the favorite.
Okay.
That's the favorite.
Beautiful. Fatah asks, what are the meanings of Yafeyu, Freydis, and the other main characters' names, and what are they rooted in?
Wow. I would say Yafeyu is the anchor. This is me getting very artistic and fluffy, so bear with me right now. I would say that Yafeyu is the anchor. I would say that Freydis is like a sail. Freydis in this book hasn't yet figured out who she is. She kind of lets the wind just take her where it may. And Alvatir is a boat, because Alvatir, this is what's very interesting about Alvatir, is that she is an older woman. And, we see these movies like, Silver Fox Men, and it's like, I'm a spy, and you know what I'm saying? And they're like fighting, and they're like doing all this stuff, you know what I'm saying? And we really don't see older female characters in this light. And Alvatir is an older woman who has been the head of the battalion, this war, the head of these men, leading them in war for many, many years. And she is a badass, and I love her dearly. So yeah.
I have another question. Falling in love with the characters. Like, when did you start to fall in love with the characters? And like, oh, this character exists not only on the page, but in my heart.
Ooh, wow. Wow. I would have to say, like, after I wrote, like, the first 2 chapters. Because it was in my head, and I was like, like, how is this really gonna feel when I, like, write it down and leave it for a few days and look back? Like, I might be like, that's, like, so cringe.
Yeah.
But I came back, and I was like, whoa. And I feel like that's the moment when I was like, okay, this idea is, like, this is a good idea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Aren't those great moments? You're like, oh, this actually isn't cringe and it doesn't suck. This is good.
Yes,
It's
we
nice.
live for those moments. Oh,
we
live.
do. Let's see. Let me refresh again. See if we have anything else. We have about 5 more minutes together. Let's see. How much does songwriting help with the creative process of writing a novel? That's from Allison.
Wow. I mean, we're trying to do a story. You know, it's all about storytelling. I would say that writing a novel, I try to make my songs sound like they would be in a novel. Like, I try to, like, write my songs in a way where it's, like, the poetic.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, you're feeling that poetic vibe. Like, oh, I would be reading this in, like, a poetry book or something. But writing books, it's way more difficult.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's hard.
Writing songs is like, you know, if you practice it, you can just like anything though.
Yeah.
I mean, if you practice it and you put your heart into it, you can vibe it.
Do you think there'll be a book 2?
Maybe.
Ooh.
Wow. I think so. I think so. I mean, these characters have so much more to do. These characters have so much more to say.
Yeah.
So
Well, that'll be fun.
pray for me and me going out into the wilderness, and I'm just in a cabin, and you're like, "Where's Willow?" And I'm like, writing book 2.
In a cabin. Oh my gosh, I love it. How does it feel to be a queen? That's from Ayana too. How does it feel to be a queen?
Goodness, I just love you guys. Like the fact that you guys all showed up to hear me pontificate about a book that is just the personification of my nerdiness in every single way. You got to the MVPs. Let's come on. Let's give it up for you guys, actually.
Okay, we have 2 more questions. Let me see. Lily asks, what were your main inspirations that you drew to write this book? Thinking back to your teenage self.
I was obsessed with a 6-book series by the author Jean M. Auel, and it was called The Clan of the Cave Bear. And it was historical fiction, and it was 6 books, and it was extremely in detail. Like, she traveled, went to these places, looked at the ground and was like, I found cave paint. It was intense. This woman went for it. And I was obsessed with that. And I think that was really the impetus of me being like, maybe historical fiction, you know?
Mm-hmm. Love it. Okay, last question. We have so many good questions here, guys. I wish I could ask them all. Let's see. Hold on. I'm gonna get it.
Technicalities, guys. You guys ever get annoyed with all the technicalities?
Okay, here we go. Last question. Christiana asks, I read in an interview that you guys had to learn a lot about African mythology and history. My question is, what would be an important fact to know before reading this book?
Wow.
That's a great question.
Okay. So an important fact to know about the book that people may not know is that there is a glossary, okay? Now this is taking my nerdiness to the extra level.
I love it.
So there are specific words that come from specific Ghanaian traditions. And they're in the glossary. I specifically, it was a whole argument because I was like, should we put all these words in there if we have to have a glossary? Like, who's gonna go into the you know what I'm saying? But then I was like, no, we should, because it gives people an opportunity to dig deeper into these topics if they want to,
That's great. So my last question for you is, when it gets quiet and the tour is done and you are by yourself and you are taking your deep breaths, what words of love would you share with yourself?
I would say, I'm proud of you. And I would say thank you for enduring discomfort and fear in order to create, which is what you always want to do. Thank you for asking that.
You're welcome.
I feel like we're connected. What? I love this woman.
Everybody give Willow Smith a big round of applause.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Let's give Alex Elle a big round of applause.
Woo!
Thank you.
Yes! This was great.
Yes. Again, thank you for the DC Public Library. Thank you for all of, give yourselves a big round of applause.
Yes, thank y'all for coming out. It's wonderful.
Thank you to the DC Public Library Foundation. Thank you again for making space for us tonight, making space for DC, making space for this conversation, making space for Mahogany Books. Yes. Hey, hey. Thank you. So as we close out, I just want to do a selfie. So if you guys have your books, we would love, if you guys can turn up the house lights, we would love for you to hold your book up. If you're supposed to be at work, put the book right here in front of your face, okay? Don't put that on Mahogany Books. Yes. Hold your books up high. Oh, beautiful.